Night Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hey everyone, welcome to Night Vision. So glad you could join us at the end of your week. And this one's been a doozy in this country and probably just about every other country I can think of. So I'm happy to take a little time to look backwards, look back in our history to some really interesting times. And what better way to do that than with our wonderful Night Vision historian, James Martin, because guess what? His new book is on sale, and it is all about pre-Columbian travel to the United States or to the New World. Who came over here before Columbus did? Because we all know he wasn't the first. So without further delay, I'm going to bring on James. Hi, James.
Hi, good to be back.
Yes, I know. It's been forever.
I know, lots of traveling for me. So yeah.
You really have. You've been all over the place. It's been crazy, but we struggled along without you. It was horrible. It was just horrible. But anyway, congratulations, because your book is now on sale, and it is the one that you wrote with our wonderful late friend Tim Wallace Murphy. I think Tim began it, if I'm not mistaken. And then in the last couple of years of his life, he was living at your place, and you worked on it together, and then he asked you to finish it. So this is, in essence, Tim Wallace Murphy's last book, but co-authored by you, soon to be followed by another one authored by you, and then maybe 2 or 3 more. So let's first talk about this new book that's out right now that people can actually purchase.
You can, yes. So you can get it from, I think, Amazon, Target, and quite a few other places. And I have just in the past 30 minutes been told that the audiobook version is available for pre-order on Audible as well. So lots of ways to get the book. And yeah, Tim asked me to edit the book, and in doing so, went through manuscripts, and then I said, well, Tim, there's some additions going to make. And his reply was typically like, Tim, you can add what the hell you want to it, dear boy. I can always delete it. That's really sort of where that came from. So yeah.
Unfortunately or fortunately, he left us before he had a chance to hit that delete button.
Yeah. So it was, he started this in 2014. I was just looking at some email exchanges before. So he started in 2014 and then really didn't do too much with it. What I was trying to do was bring in a bit of my knowledge about Rome and the Norse, and then really bring it up to date with some recent discoveries, which hopefully have achieved. So yeah, it's
so firstly, what is the name of the book? And I think we have a cover to show. Is that it?
It is. It's Uncharted, and it's rediscovered history of voyages to the Americas before Columbus.
Love it.
And really, they started back 2017, 16, around that time, having a mutual interest in really the truth around the discovery of the Americas. I mean, we have to preface that with, there are already people there. So really what we're talking about is European and Asian rediscovery of the Americas, which has been a subject that's been derided for centuries. I mean, I just want to really clarify a few things, because I can already hear some of the sort of very serious academic people who say, "Oh, no, it was it's Columbus," and then through gritted teeth you might hear the word the Vikings or the Norse. But this accepted history, and I'm not saying that everything in the book is going to be 100% accurate. There'll be new discoveries that are found that sort of add to it, and that's just the nature of history. But I was just looking at some other books. I forget his name, Graham, who wrote a book called Vikings in America. A really interesting book. He's a British PhD, and the attacks that came on him for having the audacity to suggest that the Norse may have actually settled in North America, Canada specifically, when the climate began to change. And there was this great mystery as to what happened to the Vikings who'd settled in Greenland, for example, when in about 1350 the global temperature plunges into what we call today the Little Ice Age. Where did they go? And the answer is they certainly didn't come back to Europe, or at least not all of them. So where did they go? About 3,500 people. Did they slowly die off, or did they in fact migrate to the Western lands, which we today call Canada and the United States?
Now, who were some of these groups that predated Columbus coming here? From what countries did they come? And in your research, at least up to this date, who were the first travelers to the New World?
Well, you've got some interesting speculation around the Phoenicians.
I was going to say, we've heard of the Phoenicians.
And the Egyptians. So there's been, I think very famously, people will know about the mummies, the Egyptian mummies that you might find in, museums around the world now. Certainly, where I grew up in Manchester in my teens and was working in the city centre of Manchester in northwestern England. The Manchester Museum was one of the first to discover some unusual things about the mummies that they held, namely traces of cocaine, traces of parasites that are only found in what we would call today the Americas. So there's this real, tobacco as well, things like this. So the real question has been, how did that end up in the mummies? Now, we can't genuinely rule out there was some contamination, during travel and all of this.
Or smuggling. Yes.
Smuggling, and it's been contaminated. However, for example, some of the bacteria, these parasites that have been found, I believe, I wasn't the University of Manchester who did this. I think it was the German University and Museum who did some carbon dating, and it's contemporary with the mummy itself. Now, that in itself, if we say, okay, well, fine, it's inconclusive, it's 50-50, it could have been this, but it could have been that. We've then got, to just add to this, a depiction of corn, now, or maize specifically. Now, there are corns. There was the Indian corn, I think referenced actually in the Bible, but it's a different variety of the stuff that you would find.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got that, those ears of corn in Rosslyn Chapel,
Right.
Edinburgh.
And if anyone's ever boiled corn, I know that's how I cook it. You can grill it. Don't think bad of me because I boil corn. What you'll notice is when you put the corn cob into the water, it sinks. Why am I saying that? Well, we can't have the idea that these corn cobs, floated on the ocean, because it just doesn't work like that. And even if it did, the salt water would corrode the kernels to the point that it wouldn't be recognizable, and it certainly couldn't cross-pollinate. So you've got things like this. You've got, in Egypt, they refer to the land of Punt, which they describe as, fertile, bountiful. And historians suggest, academics and others suggest that the land of Punt was actually maybe around the Somali coast, sort of central eastern coast of Africa. Certainly possible. What we're not saying in this book is that we have the definitive answers. What we are doing
So
is.
Are you speculating then that could have been the New World that they were talking about, the bountiful land?
Yes, and it's there for question and for answers. The notion that any one historian has 100% all of the answers, I'm sorry, that's just not the case. That applies just as much to me as anyone else.
Are you aware of Egyptian artifacts that have been found in the New World? I've heard about one place, and oddly, it's in western Oklahoma. There's a cave called I think they call it the Anubis Cave, and there are all these Egyptian writings, and I think there were some artifacts in there that were found by this lady named Gloria Farley, who also was the one who first translated and identified the script on the Heavener runestones in Oklahoma. And people thought she was crazy until she was actually proved right about what it was that they were. And then I'm not sure, I think probably someone who knew about her work tipped her off to this cave in western Oklahoma. But are there other places like that?
Yeah, if you move to Central America, you've got the Olmec, for example.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
You'll have to forgive my coughing. I'm recovering from glandular fever, so if you go quiet to have a cheeky cough, it's just that's the reason. So you've got the Olmec heads, perhaps not quite Egyptian, but there are some similar heads that have been found that do look relatively Nubian, I would suggest, in origin. The thing to remember is the distance between the western and eastern sides of the Mediterranean is much longer than the distance from Africa to South America.
Oh, wow.
So we know that there were Mediterranean vessels, for example, traveling from the coast of the Levant, as we call it, today's Lebanon, Israel, etc., right to the Pillars of Hercules, today's Gibraltar.
Where you just came from.
I've just come back from. So we know that, and the vessels that were traveling, Egyptian, then later, Phoenician and Roman vessels. I mean, Roman vessels, they're some of the largest. It could carry, I think, 650 tons. These are absolutely vast ocean-going vessels that were sailing. We found wrecks. We know this. So I think it's, I know the Mediterranean is a calmer sea than the Atlantic Ocean, but it's certainly within the realms of possibility that if not the Egyptians, the Romans were in and around South America at least. So you find the Olmecs who look visually like
African.
like peoples you'd find in Africa, yes. But also the work of Robert D. Marks, no relation to Carl, by the way, I think.
Oh, that's too bad.
Could be. I've not done his genealogy, so. He uncovered thousands of pottery shards and amphorae. Now, amphorae are, how can I describe them? They're Roman, or the Greek as well, but let's just say ancient Mediterranean storage vessels made out of clay, used to transport olive oil, wine, other liquids, and all of this across the Mediterranean. They are quite slender, and some of them are taller than I am, and I'm 6'5".
Wow.
Which I think is 198 centimeters or whatever the hell that is. But some of these are absolutely
We don't know
huge.
centimeters here anyway. It doesn't matter.
Oh, well, fair enough. I'm 3 fathoms tall. Is that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever.
We do inches here.
Oh, right. Okay. Fair enough.
Inches.
Too many measurements. But these amphorae are quite large. And if anyone, just as an aside, is planning a trip to Rome, absolutely try and find the Via Appia, the Appian Way, which is a Roman highway. And near to this is a huge rubbish dump. Made literally, it looks like a hill, literally made of amphorae, because they were so cheap to produce. And could really only be used once until they started to glaze the insides of these vessels. They just, bin them. There isn't any tradition in the Americas of creating amphorae. These amphorae, 2 handles, very narrow, when traveling would interlock, so you could store one above the other, and they wouldn't move around. Really clever way of transporting liquids. So to find these in the harbour of Rio de Janeiro is a problem. And Robert Marks found he believed it was a Roman galley, and also these pottery shards and all of this. Well, unfortunately for him, I mean, he was a diver, he would look at wrecks and things like this. What was really unusual was when he went to report this find, he was expelled immediately from Brazil. Licenses for any future digs removed. And then when he was eventually, I think a few years later, it wasn't too long, when he was allowed back into that country, he undertook another dive, in the port where he'd located the amphorae, and found that they had been silted and sanded over. When he did a little bit more investigation, he found that the government had actually hired a river trawler, one of these that gets rid of silt and natural buildup. Had hired one of these to go and dump a load of sand and river mud and all of this on top of the wreck. And there's things like that are really...
Why would they do that? What would be the possible reason?
Well, for me, who knows what the official reasoning is, but for me, and I know when I discussed this with Tim, because, those years ago, this was news for me. I had never heard of it, because if you type in Robert Marks on Google, you'll just find a load of, it was all a hoax stuff. You won't actually get to his work unless you really, really look. And having a little bit of access... is it time for a speech? It's only looking through the academic access that I've got and looking through a sort of search portal that I found some of his work. We were discussing this, when Tim was here, and then, out having a coffee and that kind of stuff. And I think the consensus was that, and it's only a view I shared, that it would interrupt the foundation story of Brazil. No, it would interrupt our, well, it's Portuguese, that kind of thing. And that really was the seeming reason we can't interrupt our history. I was commenting to someone the other day, you asked me a very similar question, and and why do you think that governments try to hide this up, and why do you think there's such hostility from some in the academic world? And I said, well, firstly, I'm not attacking any academic. That's not the case. But I am attacking.
Okay, they'll probably attack you.
Oh, they absolutely will, but you just rise above these things. You know what my day job is. I'm used to that. But the reality is, if you're paid to do a job that requires you to teach or to discuss and explore a narrow band of agreed history, then you're not going to then say, well, actually, what I said to you last week was a load of nonsense. Is the real stuff. And I think that's genuinely the reason. It's, money sort of has corrupted a bit of the truth around this. Sorry just to go on, but when when I was studying, bits of archaeology and classics, it would be like excuse me just one second. It would be like one of my lecturers saying, everything we've taught is wrong. Now, let me just say, so when I was studying history, the prevailing view was civilization, which we translate from Latin to mean city dweller, from civitas, for example. Civilization only occurred when and during and after what was called the Agrarian Revolution. This is when humans decided that they were going to farm, to plant seeds and cultivate crops, allowing a surplus of food, which meant people could settle in one place. It wasn't hunter-gathering. And, this occurred, several thousand years ago, 8 to 10, let's say, 1,000 years ago, around the Middle East. And that was the prevailing view. It definitely happened. No one's denying that. Cats become domesticated, or actually they domesticate humans. That's probably a story for another show. But then you find, I think in 1995, you find the discovery of Göbekli Tepe. You've got Novella Corey, Chakloyak, you've got all these other, sort of discoveries and all of this, which just whack that out of the equation. Who are building the vast complexes, the likes of Göbekli Tepe, and there are older places recently discovered, by the way, in the area.
It's amazing.
If people don't have, the idea of hunter-gatherers, everyone's starving. Well, the last thing that you do is, I'm absolutely hungry. I haven't eaten for days. I know, let's go and build a temple, or let's go and build. You don't do that. These are human beings, Homo sapien, like us. They think like us. They might have a different interpretation of the world to us, but we know that if we're hungry, our goal, our biology tells us, go and eat. I'm type 1 diabetic. When my sugars are low, I can't describe it. It really is sort of like basic brain function. If my sugars get exceptionally low, you need to go and eat something. You need to get some sugar into your system. It's the same stuff. What I'm not doing is, I know, let's go and build some totems. Let's go and do all of this. So it's interrupted that theory of the Agrarian Revolution. In North America, in 1960, there'd been rumors for preceding centuries as the, I think, I've got relatives up in the likes of Minnesota, so I'll just keep on that state. where Scandinavian settlers settled, in Minnesota, northern United States, southern Canada, that kind of thing. They brought with them quite a few of the rumors, the tales that actually their ancestors were in the area too. That was laughed at, and famously, I think it was at the Chicago World's Fair, where they were celebrating, I think it was Columbus Day or something like this. A group of Norse had decided to go and sail right outside the exposition, a big longboat. It's then through gritted teeth again that in 1960, the settlement today, the UNESCO settlement called Lonesome Meadow, Jellyfish Cove perhaps, in Newfoundland, confirmed what a lot of people already knew, which was the Norse were there, the Vikings were there was a settlement. So yes, it's like I say, these discoveries sort of interrupt the narrative, but that was 1960. You tell me, is Columbus still taught in schools? No, today, even though we know that we can push further and further back.
Yeah.
So that's really where we're coming from.
I just don't want to correct all those books, all those Macmillan books.
Never you mind.
Giving us the wrong history. James hails from the Macmillan clan.
Well, quite a few things that I've written are now in the Clan Macmillan Library, so we can't be too critical now, can we?
See, oh, that's amazing. That's great.
But
it is so weird, though. It's like any time a new discovery is made, the first reaction of academia is to poo-poo it every single time. And I always think, is it an ego thing? Do they not want anyone to discover anything? But what I really think it is it's the safer thing to do, because they don't want to look like they're not, that they're falling for something, or I think it's easier to be skeptical than to give someone a fair listen.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Take the safer route. And what irritates me about just the general debate anyway is the minute anyone publishes or writes or in interviews or anything like that, you then end up with this sort of cult of skeptics. Everyone should be skeptical. It's questioning. That's really what we're talking about. We should question, not just accept what we're told, but question it and come to the understanding. There are some things in life that are absolute facts. If you don't believe in gravity, I'd suggest that you go and find a cliff and discover all about that. It's not a theory, in other words. There are some absolute facts. That applies to lots of different disciplines, from science to history. But the one thing about history is history lessons tend not to discuss, for example, like workers' history, the history of the average person. It tends to be about battles and leaders and all of this, as opposed to, who settled where and what were they doing and how did they feel about things and what was life really like. And I suppose then, with that, you end up with, like I say, this cult of skeptics who will just go on the attack without trying to understand why it is someone is presenting just an alternative view. Disagreement, by the way, is fine. We're not Hitler because you disagree with someone. You just disagree with them. It's how your opinions form. And I think that absolute defensive-ness on topics like this really comes from, this is what my job's all about. And as such, if I even slightly agree with a slightly alternative view, then, that's it. My my job's finished too.
Yeah. So can we get a little bit into this subsequent series that's going to be coming out? Now, is this book Uncharted a part of the series, or that's a standalone?
No, that's a standalone.
And we've got 3 more coming that are going to be a series. Yeah. And I guess I'm assuming chronological, right?
Yeah, I should preface this. It's when you're writing, it takes a hell of a long time and a lot of research. So I started writing. When was it? It was during lockdown, actually, 2021. It occurred to me. I just finished reading a book about the Knights Templar, and I didn't quite throw it across the floor, but I just put it down and thought, I am tired of reading about the Knights Templar crusading and then, getting wiped out.
And then what happened? Yeah, exactly.
And it's just every Templar book is a different variation of the same thing. So I thought, my thought process was, okay, what happened to them afterwards? I've 6-7 years of research traveling around Europe, looking at sites from Scotland to Portugal, the Netherlands, Germany, things like this. What happened afterwards? Is that right? And unfortunately, I don't know. When you start writing, you know what this is like. When you start writing, you get into a zone.
Oh yeah.
The book writes you. So I realized that I can't just talk about what happened to Knights Templar afterwards. I need to start off with how did they begin? And because it's me, of course, I had to start in the Roman Empire, didn't I?
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
All the way back. Of course you'd start with the Romans.
So the trilogy, so I just explain a book really, you're talking about 50 to 100,000 words. If you're then producing anything more than that in today's world, people won't read it because it looks daunting. If anyone's trying to read Karl Marx's Capital or J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, just looking at the book, you think, I think I'll do that once. So trying to condense, and as I got to chapter 2 and looked at the word count, nearly 30,000 words, I've thought, oh, bugger.
Oh, boy.
This is going to have to be split from one book into 3. So the first part of the trilogy, here's a little bit of the artwork. That'll probably change a little, but is called Order of Magnitude, The Rise of the Knights.
That's a surprise to me because I was expecting another book, but I guess you had to back it up a little bit to accommodate
the Romans. Yeah, of course.
Romans. Yeah.
And the Celts as well, I should just say.
I mean, how in the heck did the Romans have anything to do with the Knights Templar?
Well, without the Romans, there wouldn't be a Knights Templar. There wouldn't be Christianity. There wouldn't be...
without the Knights Templar, there would not be Christianity.
Without the Romans, there wouldn't be Christianity. And without Christianity, there wouldn't be any Templars. And in fact...
That's right, yeah.
In fact, my proposal is, this is going to cause a bit of the stir in the Catholic community, I would imagine. But it struck me looking at the Anglo-Saxon period that Christianity didn't really take solid roots up until later on. And when looking at the early church and looking at, so if you imagine before the First Nicene Council, what you've got is hundreds, perhaps, different versions and views of Christianity. Is Jesus divine? Isn't he? You know, is he just an ordinary bloke? But Christianity hasn't taken root and doesn't really do that until it converted the Vikings, until it began pushing out the Moors from Spain. You know, we tend to forget that a little bit later on. You've got Mongols coming around as well. What is it that unifies people today? Unfortunately, it's flags and war. And the real beginnings of the entrenchment of Christianity in Europe comes from the Crusades. That's the argument.
Sure.
But you will find in the book, so I'm currently just finishing off Constantine. He's the emperor I hate the most. I mean, the Nicene Council, there's a few truths in that might surprise people. It didn't unify anyone. Actually, it caused the biggest schism between the Arians, you know, the followers of Arius, I think of Tyre as someone like that, and Orthodox, and then these other branches of Christianity, not forgetting Celtic Christianity, and all of this. So the real origin points, and I'll just give you a little brief overview. It has been said that the Templars, when they were digging in the under Temple Mount, found something. People have suggested it was an object that they took to the Pope and bribed the Pope and said, well, look, we'll expose this. The problem with that is a bit like Constantine's mother, who today we probably know better as Santalina. She was really interested in Christianity, and she ended up going with a very small detachment of soldiers to try and find the true cross. Now, Romans who are armoured and all of this, in the Israeli sun, it's less armour and more like a form of oven. And what do we think they were doing? Just digging for hours and days and then weeks trying to find something? Or go and find a bit of wood, will you? Yeah, right, okay. Look what we found. I don't think it's an object because there were a lot of fakes and counterfeits coming out in the medieval period and before from that area. No, this is a bit of the true cross. I mean, John the Baptist must be a hydra. You know, that many heads of him knocking around Europe. What if they discovered the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, for example, or perhaps one of the Gnostic texts? That would certainly interrupt a few things in the Vatican.
Yeah, I mean, everyone speculates that they found the Ark of the Covenant or the Great Menorah, but that wouldn't have been something that, you know, the church would be afraid to reveal. So it has to be something that goes against the doctrine, I would think. Otherwise, you know, why the threat? What would the threat be?
So for me, it seems, and I don't have the answer to this. I'm just saying, when you start looking at some of the Gnostic texts and some of the things that were sort of discarded from the Nicene councils and others, what if they were discovered and that would have, I don't know, could have brought Christianity down, really? You know, Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the only way to access God is through yourself. What would be the point of the church?
Yeah, what would be the point of the big gaudy churches?
That's really where I come up to, but you've got to understand, well, then these Gnostic texts and all of this, what happened to them? You know, what was going on in the Roman Empire? So that's really where I started, and then having a look at Columba up in Scotland. You know, a lot of these sites where Templars had activity and their own preceptories and all of this. So that's where I'm sort of leading to. And then we'll finally get on to the middle book, which again copious research notes is called Out of Order, The Downfall of the Knights Templar. And this will have a look at really what happened across Europe. With for example, Alphonse in Portugal, who it might be argued that the Knights Templar founded that kingdom, or that country, I should say, Portugal. But there's quite a few, and this will be presented as evidence, but the letters going from King Alfonso to the Pope: you are not getting rid of the Knights Templar. We need them. We've got enemies on our borders. They're helping us. They're doing all of this. No. And basically, there's an agreement that they'll just change the name to the Order of Christ. And that's literally it. So the Knights Templar carry on as normal. You've then got some interesting stuff. I know we've spoke about this, but again...
well, you mentioned, when we've talked about before, obviously, that King Alfonso willed all his properties to the Knights Templar. Are you suggesting that Portugal might have been part of what was willed?
No, a very different king. So that one was called Alphonse the Battler. And he was the king of Aragon back in the 1130s. He most certainly, this will probably be in the, well, no, I say probably, this is in the final chapter of Order of Magnitude. He gifted the entire kingdom of Aragon to the Knights Templar.
And Aragon, for people who may not know, sort of encompassed northern Spain and southern France. It was a very large area. But
yeah, and Aragon's expanding and it's looking northwards. But by the time of Alphonse, and after he dies, what have you, begins, it merges with the House of Barcelona and starts then. It's southward direction. But yeah, why just a decade after the Templars were founded? They probably were founded a little earlier, by the way. Or at least the idea was, why would you gift your kingdom in a will that was what they called sureties? In other words, was witnessed by English nobles. Remember, England controlled today's Gascony at this point. And Aquitaine. Why would you get another power to witness this will? It's at Bayonne of all places. It's very unusual. But no, this later, when the county of Portugal, becomes kingdom, it almost is certain that the Knights Templar founded that country. In fact, there's a very interesting seal from that king in the 1300s, which reads as Porto Graal, the port of the Grail, but that might just be...
I saw it with my own eyes on the document. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, what happened to them after they passed, in Germany, the Templars are disbanded, and they go, no, we're not. And then go and put under siege some bishops who are trying to get rid of them. And they go, okay, fine. They end up joining the Teutonic Orders, which another crusade is launched against them, by the way, and then perhaps into some other orders. And then the last book, which again is very much in note format, is called Last Orders, and that's the impact of the Knights Templar. Why do we find them fascinating today? And what is their impact now? Unfortunately, in the late 1800s, for example, just as we're seeing again today, the far right, what we call fascists, have commandeered the image of the Knights Templar, describing them as, pure and and all of this Aryans and all of this nonsense is just categorically not true. But in computer games, the Knights Templar are a fundamental part of the game series, now film series, I think, called Assassin's Creed. What is it about this order that still captivates us today? Dan Brown, Tim, so many others. I'm writing a book about it, writing 3. What is it about the order that really captures us? And I think it's a lot of the mystery around it.
It is. There's a sort of mystery and a romance, sort of thing. They're so iconic, it's such an image of strength and heroism. I think it's everybody sort of romanticizes them.
In the order of magnitude, sort of where I've paused, I'm currently looking at the relationship with the King Arthur, who most certainly in the period sometimes called the Dark Ages, but the early medieval period, is not the story that we understand today. The story of King Arthur, Arthur probably is a title meaning something like from Arcturus, meaning something like the Great Bear, its title. Mm-hmm. Merlin, wise one from the sea, that kind of stuff. Lots of interesting things there. But, later on when you see Wolfram Eschenbach, you see Thomas Mallory, and you find all of these other people, they incorporate the sort of knightly side of it, the chivalric side, with very Templar overtones. And again, that sort of leads them into this romantic tale, and probably to sell books. I mean, the Templars were a fundamental part of certainly French medieval society for a long time, and it was genuinely shocking to people who, on Saturday the 14th of October, 1307, I can imagine everyone. I mean, this wasn't just kings and nobles. I can imagine everyone thinking, what the hell has just happened? The order went from right to the top with nobles, right down to John the Muck Shoveler. I
know what you really wanted to say.
I know. So it's all really interesting, and it sort of ties in then, I suppose, where in Uncharted, looking at Celtic and Ogham scripts that have been found in northern United States, but the overlap, I suppose, there is with the so-called Xeno voyages, perhaps trying to find Henry Sinclair. I have no idea why people call him Prince, by the way. But Henry Sinclair, let's call him, the Earl of Caithness, Earl of Orkney, Sinclair, who it's proposed ends up in the northern United States, I think 1362, something like this. Perhaps trying to find what happened to the Norse colonists in Greenland. He seems to sail with the Zeno brothers, or at least one of them, and some others to explore Vinland and all of this. And then you get into the Newport Tower. Now, the Sinclairs and the relationship with the Templars isn't also what we have read in some books. They did have, it's proposed at least, some of the Sinclairs were Templars in the past, but I hate to say this, when the orders came in France in 1307 to get rid of the Templars, Scotland was fighting for its independence really from England, but England controlled Edinburgh, it controlled the southern lowlands, and all of this in Scotland, controlled quite a vast chunk of it still. And unfortunately, the two principal witnesses to the English court in Edinburgh testifying against the Templars. Both of them were Sinclairs. So it's a bit of a mixed bag with that family. But hey, you know, they certainly have had an impact. And another family that people find very intriguing because of perhaps Rosslyn and Da Vinci and all of this. So yeah, lots of stuff to unfold and read about.
It really is. I want to show one more time the book cover for Uncharted by Tim Wallace Murphy and James Martin. This book is currently on sale now, so please check it out. But you know what? I don't think I can do the rest of this show without Bill.
Yeah, I think so too.
Where's Bill?
I don't know.
Where's our producer? Where's our operations manager?
I don't know where he is.
He seems to be absent. I think he can hear us talking about him.
Maybe he just doesn't want us to sing.
Bill, do you want us to sing? He's ignoring us. Well, I was going to ask Bill to join us because in just a very, very few minutes, where Bill is sitting, it will be April 1st. And we all know what April 1st is. It's April Fool's Day, but it's also Bill's birthday. So I wanted to say happy birthday and tell him how much we appreciate him. And I really wouldn't want to work with any other producer. I think it's well, I mean, Bill and I worked together elsewhere before we were at KGRA. In fact, Bill's the reason I came to KGRA. So I wanted to say happy birthday, and I guess he must have nipped off to the loo or something, but maybe he'll hear it on the replay. Anyway, you know what? There was one more thing I wanted to mention. I hesitate to inject something controversial into the program. But to me, it's something that shouldn't be controversial at all. And I wanted to mention, as President Biden did today, that today is Transgender Day of Visibility. And as a mom and a grandmom, I just want to say that all kids should feel safe and happy. All kids. Kids are kids. And we love you kids. So you kids, be who you are, and we're going to love you for it.
And just to say, to anyone who thinks that any of the trans discussion is anything new, it's not. If you go back to the 1300s, you had someone called John Reichner, who transitioned to, I think it was Joan Reichner. He was a monk, and she became a monk and was perfectly recognised. This wasn't seen as too much of a controversial idea. Maybe it was to some, but this isn't anything that's new. Remember, equality isn't about treating everyone the same. That's fascism. If you want that, go to North Korea, where you have to think the same, act the same, and do all of that. I know that there's some out there who want us to think the same. Equality is about giving everyone a level playing field. I'm quite tall. I can see over most fences, garden fences. Others might not. It doesn't mean that they should never be able to see over the fence. It just might mean they need some support to do so. That's equality. And, whatever people's belief systems, fine. We really shouldn't. It's not controversial. People take a step back and remember there is much more that unites us than divides us.
Absolutely. And
This is another flavor of the homophobia. It's another flavor of the sexism, the racism. It's just another look at them.
It's another way of othering.
And, while we're all bickering about labels, the people who aren't bickering are the people who run all the way to the bank. The people who keep taking your pensions from you, keep taking your rights and things like that. Imagine what strength there would be if people put away the petty label distinctions and instead, unified to work together.
Absolutely. Well, we should all just be kind. All just be kind to each other.
Yeah, there you go.
That's all I know. Boy, we're wrapping up, getting ready to. We sure ended on a serious note, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
Let's go back to Bill's birthday.
I know we should. Happy Bill Day, April Cool Day.
April Cool Day. Yeah, let's change it. Let's change it. But we got. Looks like we're down to the final. Oh, wanted to mention. Got a big event coming up on April 29th on KGRA. We're having a live stream event. We're going to be streaming the stunning film Alien Abduction Answers. And then following the film, we're going to have an expert panel and including people from the film talking about their experiences and the experiences of others in the film. It's going to be interactive. We'll be taking your questions. So I hope that you'll join us. Watch the website. Tickets are going to be on sale imminently. So I did want to just give a heads up on that one. Looks like it's time for us to go.
See you later, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.